My dad doesn't know this, but I heard him tell another man he wished his kid were his son instead of me, so I gave him exactly what he asked for. And now, I treat him like a stranger. I was 14 when I heard the words that changed everything between my dad and me. We were at my brother Noah's baseball tournament. Noah was 16, the star pitcher, the golden boy who could do no wrong. I played soccer, but my dad never showed up to my games. There was always an excuse. Work ran late, the car broke down, a headache, something. But for Noah, he never missed a single game, not once. That day, I left my phone in Dad's truck, so I went back to get it during the 7th inning. That's when I heard him talking to another father in the parking lot. The man was complaining about his own son, saying the kid had no drive, no passion, no energy. My dad laughed, then said something that hit me like a punch to the chest. He said, "You should trade him for mine." Not Noah, obviously. The other one. "Ethan's so forgettable, you probably wouldn't even notice the difference." They both laughed. And then Dad added, "Sometimes I watch Noah out there and think, what if I had two like him instead of one useless one? That would have been the dream." I stood there behind the truck, frozen, my phone in my hand, my own father calling me useless, forgettable, saying he could replace me and wouldn't even care. I waited until they left. Then I got inside the truck and just sat there in silence. When Dad came back after the game, Noah was in the passenger seat like always, talking about his strikeouts. Dad asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. That was the last real conversation we ever had. From that day on, I gave him exactly what he wanted, a son he wouldn't notice. I stopped asking him to come to my games, stopped telling him about school, my friends, or anything that mattered to me. When he asked how my day was, I said fine. When he tried to start a conversation, I answered with one word and left the room. At first, he didn't notice. He was too busy living through Noah's victories. But a few months later, something shifted. He started knocking on my door at night, asking if I wanted to shoot hoops in the driveway. I told him I had homework. He'd ask if I wanted to grab burgers after practice. I said I wasn't hungry. He'd try to ask about soccer season. I'd tell him it was fine and walk away. Noah caught on before Dad did. One evening, he pulled me aside and asked why I was acting weird with him and Dad. I told him I wasn't acting weird. I was just giving Dad what he clearly wanted, one less son to worry about. He didn't understand, but he didn't push it either. By the time I turned 16, Dad was trying harder. He started showing up at my games unannounced, standing quietly on the sidelines, waving when I looked his way. But when I saw him there, I felt nothing. Not anger, not pride, not even relief. Just emptiness. After the games, he'd come up to me, trying to make small talk. I'd thank him politely, like you'd thank a neighbor for showing up to help move a box. No warmth, no connection. He was trying to have a relationship with a wall. The breaking point came last month, at Noah's graduation party. Dad stood up to give a toast. He talked about how proud he was of his family, of both his sons. He looked straight at me and said, "Ethan, I know I haven't always been there for you the way I should have been, but I want you to know I'm proud of the man you're becoming." I stared at him, my face completely blank, and said, "Thank you, sir." The room went quiet. He froze. Mom stared at me. Noah's smile faded. I didn't care. After the party, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. He said we needed to talk, that something was wrong between us, that he missed his son. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I don't know what you mean. I've always been here." He shook his head. "No, you haven't. You've been somewhere else for years, and I don't know why." I almost told him. I almost threw those words from the parking lot right back in his face, but then I realized something he didn't deserve to know. He got exactly what he wanted, a son so forgettable he could live under the same roof and never notice him. So I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and walked out. Now he slips notes under my door. He sends me texts asking if I want to hang out, if I'd go to a game with him. I always answer politely, "Maybe next time." There's never a next time. Noah tells me Dad's been crying lately, says he doesn't understand what he did wrong, and that's the point. He never will, because I'll never tell him. There are words you can't unhear, and once they're said, they rot in your chest forever. He wished for another son. Now he has one, just not the one he expected. A stranger living in his house. Exactly what he wanted. 4 years have passed since that day in the parking lot. 4 years since I heard my dad say he wished he could trade me for another son. 4 years treating him like what he made me, someone who doesn't exist. Now, a week before I leave for college, the tension in our house feels unbearable. Mom was the first to notice. That morning, we were sitting at the breakfast table, Dad at the head, Mom to his right, Noah across from me. The same setup as always, the same heavy silence that had become our family's normal. "Ethan," Mom said, setting down her coffee cup, "your father and I were talking. We'd like to throw you a going-away party before you leave." I didn't look up from my plate. That's not necessary. Of course it is. Dad jumped in, his voice too cheerful, too forced. It's not every day a son goes off to college. We want to make it special. I looked up for the first time that morning. Thanks for the thought, sir, but I'd rather keep it low-key. His jaw tightened. I knew he hated when I called him sir. He hated it because it reminded him of exactly what we were now. Nothing. Come on, Ethan, Noah started, but I cut him off. I still need to finish packing. Excuse me. I stood up and went upstairs. As I left, I heard Mom's voice behind me. What's going on with him? He's been like this for years. It's not normal. I didn't hear Dad's answer. I didn't care. In my room, I looked at the half-filled boxes stacked against the wall. 18 years of my life reduced to 4 cardboard boxes. Clothes, books, a few keepsakes. No family photos. I'd taken those down years ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Noah. Need to talk. Now. 2 minutes later, he walked into my room without knocking. Close the door, I said. He did, then sat on my bed. His expression was the same mix of confusion, frustration, and sadness I'd seen too many times before. Dad's falling apart, he said bluntly. Mom thinks he's depressed. He cries almost every night. I shrugged. I'm sorry for him. No, you're not. That's the problem. I turned to face him. What do you want me to say, Noah? I want you to tell me what really happened. You've treated Dad like a stranger for 4 years, as if he did something unforgivable, and no one knows why. I already told you years ago, I said quietly. I'm just giving him what he wanted. One less son to worry about. That doesn't mean anything, he said, frustrated. Dad loves you. He always talks about how proud he is of you, how smart you are. Now he does, I interrupted. Where was that pride when I was 14? Noah went silent. What happened when you were 14? I didn't answer. I turned back to my boxes and kept packing. I'm your brother, he said softly. If something happened, I need to know. No, you don't. And even if I told you, it wouldn't change anything. Noah stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he said, Mom's throwing the party anyway. Saturday. Grandparents, uncles, cousins, the whole family. Good for her. Ethan, please, it's your send-off. At least do it for Mom. I didn't respond. He closed the door behind him. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring out the window. Outside, Dad's car sat in the driveway, in the exact same spot where his truck had been 4 years ago. The same parking lot, the same memories. I wondered if he ever remembered that conversation, if he ever thought about the words he said that day. Probably not. To him, it was just casual talk between two dads. A stupid joke. To me, it was the day my father died. Not literally, of course. He was still there, living under the same roof, breathing the same air. But the man I thought loved me, the man I thought was my dad, stopped existing the moment I heard those words. You should trade him for mine. Not Noah, obviously. Ethan's so forgettable you wouldn't even notice. 4 years later, I could still hear his laughter, still feel the cold metal of the truck against my back as I hid, still feel something inside me break. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Party's on Saturday at 6 p.m. Everyone's coming. Please, Ethan. It's important to the family. Family. What a hollow word. I typed a short reply. Okay. I wasn't doing it for Dad, not even for the family. I was doing it because in 6 days, I'd be 1,000 miles away, and I'd never have to pretend to belong here again. The next few days were quiet torture. Mom threw herself into planning the party, catering, decorations, guest lists. She invited people I hadn't seen in years. Dad tried to help, but every time he walked into a room where I was, the air turned heavy. I didn't exactly ignore him. I just responded politely, like I would to a mailman or a neighbor. On Thursday night, I came downstairs for water and found him waiting in the kitchen. Ethan, can we talk for a minute? He asked. Sure. I poured the water, leaned against the counter. I didn't sit. Didn't want to make it seem like a long talk. He rubbed his hands together, nervous. I know things have been hard between us these last few years. Oh, really? Don't do that, he said quietly. You know what I mean. No, sir, I don't. I've been right here the whole time. Please, he said, voice cracking. Stop calling me sir. I'm your father. I looked him dead in the eyes. Are you? His face collapsed. What kind of question is that? Of course I am. I raised you. You gave me a roof, food, and education. I appreciate that. Ethan, what did I do? Please tell me. I've been trying to figure it out for 4 years. Your mom thinks I'm losing my mind. Noah looks at me like I'm a failure. And you look at me like I'm nothing. I don't look at you like you're nothing, I said calmly. I look at you like what you are. A man who lives in my house. Tears filled his eyes. That's not fair. he whispered. Whatever I did, I deserve to know. I deserve the chance to make it right. Some things don't have a fix, I said. Everything can be fixed if there's love, he said. And I love you, Ethan. I've always loved you. I almost laughed. Almost. Good night, sir. I walked past him and up the stairs without looking back. The next day, Mom asked if I could go with her to pick up a few last things for the party. I said yes, mostly because I needed to get out of that house. We drove in silence for a while. The afternoon sun burned through the windshield, and the hum of the car was the only sound between us. Then she spoke. Your father loves you. You know that, right? I kept my eyes on the road ahead. Sure. Ethan, look at me. I didn't. Ethan. I sighed and turned my head slightly. What? What happened between you and your dad? And don't say nothing. I've watched this family fall apart for years and no one tells me why. Nothing happened, Mom. I just grew up. Growing up doesn't make you treat your father like a stranger. It doesn't make you refuse to spend time with him. It doesn't make you call him sir. I didn't answer. You were 14 when everything changed, she continued, her voice trembling now. One day you were a normal kid who wanted your dad's attention. The next, it was like someone flipped a switch. What happened that day? I don't remember. You're lying. I clenched my jaw. No, I'm not. Don't do that, she said, her voice firm. I'm your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I know when you're hiding something. The car stopped at a red light. She turned to face me, eyes locked on mine. Noah told me you once said you were giving your dad what he wanted. What does that mean? My throat tightened. Nothing. Ethan, please. You're leaving for college in a few days. I might not see you for months. I need to understand before you go. The light turned green. She didn't move. Mom, I said quietly. The light? I don't care about the light, she said, tears in her eyes. I care about my son. A horn blared behind us. She didn't flinch. Talk to me. There's nothing to say. Another horn. She finally drove forward, but her expression stayed the same. Determined. Desperate. I'm going to find out what happened, she said. With or without your help. I didn't say another word for the rest of the ride, but for the first time in years, I felt something close to fear, not because of my father, but because of what would happen when my mother finally learned the truth about him. Saturday came too fast. By 5 in the afternoon, the house was full of family. Uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, people I hadn't seen in years. I wore a blue shirt Mom had bought for the occasion, combed my hair, and stared at myself in the mirror. The reflection that looked back at me was a stranger, an 18-year-old with empty eyes and a practiced smile, forgettable, just like Dad wanted. When I went downstairs, the room filled with voices. Ethan, look at you, college boy now. So proud of you. Your dad must be over the moon. I nodded, smiled, said thank you. Every word rehearsed, every expression controlled. Dad stood in the middle of the room, talking to my grandfather. When he saw me coming down the stairs, his face lit up with a hope that almost made me pity him. Ethan, he said, come here. Your grandpa wants to congratulate you. I walked over calmly. Hi, Grandpa. Look at you, Grandpa said. All grown up. Your dad never stops talking about you. I glanced at Dad. That's nice of him. Grandpa frowned at my tone but said nothing. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. I didn't move. I didn't push it away either. I just didn't react. I'm really proud of you, son, he said, voice trembling a little. Thank you. Nothing more. Just thank you? Grandpa asked, half joking. Dad forced a smile, but I could see it falter. The party went on. Laughter, food, small talk. I played my role perfectly, smiling when expected, answering politely, never too much, never too little. At 8, Dad stood and raised his glass. Family, friends, he began. Tonight, we're here to celebrate my son Ethan, as he starts a new chapter in his life. Everyone clapped. Ethan's always been a special kid, he continued. Smart, hardworking, kind. I know I haven't always been the best father, his voice broke. But I want everyone here to know that I love both my sons equally. Noah and Ethan, you're my pride and joy. The room was silent except for the faint hum of music. All eyes were on me. They wanted a reaction, a smile, a nod, something. I gave them a polite smile and said, thank you all for being here. And thank you, sir, for organizing this. The silence that followed was absolute. Mom's face went pale. Noah's eyes widened. Dad's expression shattered right there in front of 30 people. I took a sip of water and turned to greet a cousin who had just arrived, because that's what you do when someone you barely know gives you a compliment. You move on. Exactly what he wanted. The silence lasted only a few seconds before the whispers started. Aunt Patricia spoke first. Well, Ethan's always been such a polite boy, right, David? Dad didn't answer. He just stood there, frozen, glass in hand, staring into nowhere. Mom touched his arm. David, come on, the Johnsons want to say hi. He nodded numbly and walked away. Noah appeared at my side. What the hell was that? He hissed. You called him sir in front of everyone. It's a sign of respect, I said flatly. It's a sign of humiliation. I looked him in the eye. He started this, Noah. I'm just finishing it. Noah opened his mouth to argue, but Grandma walked over before he could. Ethan, dear, is everything all right between you and your father? She asked softly. Everything's fine, Grandma. You two seemed tense. It's just your imagination. Have you tried the appetizers? Mom ordered them specially. She hesitated but nodded, realizing it was useless to push. The party dragged on for 2 more hours. Dad avoided me completely. Mom smiled through the pain, pretending everything was normal, but every few minutes I caught her glancing at me, studying me, trying to understand. When the last guest finally left, she shut the door and leaned against it. Living room, she said sharply. Now. It wasn't a request. I walked in and sat on the couch. Noah sat beside me. Dad stood near the window, his back to us. Mom faced me directly. What was that? She demanded. What was what? Don't play dumb. You called your father sir in front of 30 people. Your grandparents, your aunts, everyone. It's a respectful way to address someone older, I said. It's how you talk to a stranger, she snapped. I didn't answer. Dad turned around, his eyes red. Laura, leave it. No, David, she said. This ends tonight. I've watched our family fall apart for 4 years. I'm done pretending. Ethan, I'll ask you one last time. What happened between you and your father? Nothing, I said quietly. You're lying. I'm not. Then what does that mean? Nothing happened. Because that's exactly the problem. Nothing happened. No effort, no care, no love. Mom's voice cracked. Dad stepped closer. That's not true. I love both my sons. Really? I said, standing. Then tell me, Dad, how many of my soccer games did you go to when I was 14? I went to plenty, he said. How many exactly? He hesitated. I don't remember. 0, I said. You went to 0. And how many of Noah's baseball games did you miss that same year? He didn't answer. None, I said for him. You didn't miss a single one. Ethan, I was working a lot back then. There was always time for Noah. Always. Mom looked between us, her face full of confusion and hurt. So this is about the games? It's not just that, I said. Then what is it? It doesn't matter. I'm leaving in 5 days. After that, you don't have to worry about me anymore. Sit down, Mom said firmly. Something in her tone made me obey. She turned to Dad. Think, David. Is there anything you said or did when Ethan was 14 that might have hurt him? He ran a hand over his face. Laura, it's been 4 years. I can't remember every conversation. Think harder. He sighed. No arguments, no punishments, nothing out of the ordinary. Noah spoke quietly. It was during my baseball regionals. Ethan once mentioned something happened that day. Dad frowned. Regionals? We won that tournament. It was one of the best days of... He stopped. His eyes went blank for a second, then clouded with something darker. Recognition. Guilt. What is it? Mom asked. Nothing, he said too quickly. David, she warned. I said it's nothing. I stood. Of course it's nothing. It was just a joke between dads, right? Dad went pale. Ethan, good night. I walked upstairs without looking back. I sat on the floor of my room, back against the wall, trying to slow my breathing. Downstairs, I could still hear their voices. Mom demanding answers, Dad dodging them, Noah trying to play peacemaker. After 20 minutes, footsteps came up the stairs. 3 quiet knocks. Ethan, Mom's voice. Open the door. I'm tired. Either you open it, or I will. I sighed, stood up, and opened the door. She stepped in, closed it behind her, and sat on my bed. Her eyes were red. Did your father remember something? I didn't respond. He said he's not sure, that he might be confusing things, but he remembered having a conversation with another dad that day, during the tournament. My chest tightened. He wouldn't tell me what it was about, she continued softly. He got nervous, almost started crying. Ethan, I need you to tell me what you heard that day. Why? Because I'm your mother, because I love you. And if your father said something so terrible that it destroyed the bond between you two, I deserve to know. I stared at her for a long moment, 4 years of silence pressed against my throat. You really want to know? I asked. Yes, she whispered. Even if it changes everything, the truth doesn't destroy Ethan, she said. It frees. I sat down in the chair across from her. That day, I began slowly. During the 7th inning, I went to Dad's truck to get my phone. I heard him talking to another man in the parking lot. She nodded, waiting. The guy was complaining about his son, said he was lazy, unmotivated. Dad laughed and said he should trade him for his own. Mom blinked. What? He said. You should trade him for mine. Not Noah, obviously, the other one. Ethan's so forgettable you probably wouldn't even notice. The color drained from her face. He also said sometimes he looks at Noah and wonders what it would have been like to have 2 sons like him instead of one useless one. Mom didn't move. Didn't even blink. They both laughed, I said quietly, like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Silence filled the room, so thick I could hear my heartbeat. So, since that day, I continued, I gave him what he wanted. A forgettable son. One he wouldn't notice. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Tears slid down her cheeks. 4 years, she whispered. You carried that alone for 4 years? I didn't have a choice. You could have told me. For what? It wouldn't have changed what he said, or what he thought of me. She stood abruptly. I'm talking to your father. Don't, I said firmly. Ethan, this can't just... It already did, 4 years ago. The only thing left to decide is what you'll do with the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, breathing hard. Then she turned and left the room. I listened to her footsteps going down the stairs, then the silence before the storm. 10 minutes later, the shouting began. How could you say something like that about your own son? Laura, it was a stupid joke. 2 men talking, that's all. A joke? You called him useless, forgettable. You laughed about it. I don't even remember saying it that way. Oh, now you don't remember? You conveniently forget the moment that broke your child? Keep your voice down. Ethan can hear us. Good. Let him hear how his father tries to minimize what he did. A door slammed. Then silence again. I stayed awake until after 3 in the morning. At 7, there was another knock. Ethan, it's Noah. I opened the door. He looked awful. Dark circles under his eyes. Messy hair. Mom told me everything. He said quietly. I didn't answer. Why didn't you ever tell me? What would you have done? I don't know. Talked to him. Called him out. Something. And then what? You think that would have changed anything? Noah sat on the edge of my bed, shaking his head. When you said you were giving Dad what he wanted, I thought you were just being dramatic. I didn't realize it's not your fault, I said. You were 16. This isn't on you. He swallowed hard. Dad didn't sleep here last night. Mom kicked him out. He's staying at a hotel, where he belongs. She said she needed time to process everything. And you? I asked. I think he made a horrible mistake, Noah said. I think he should have apologized years ago, but I also think he deserves the chance to do it now, even if it's late. Some apologies don't mean anything, Noah. Why not? Because some words can't be undone. He can say he's sorry 1,000 times. It won't change what I heard that day. It won't change what he really thought of me. You don't know what he really thought, Noah said softly. Yeah, I said. I do. Nobody jokes like that unless there's truth behind it. He didn't respond. I went downstairs an hour later. Mom sat in the kitchen staring at a cup of cold coffee. She hadn't slept either. Good morning, I said. Sit down. I sat across from her. Ethan, I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything else? Anything else he said or did that I don't know about? I shook my head. No, that was enough. She nodded slowly, then reached under the table and pulled out a small notebook. I found this in your old room, she said quietly. Your journal. My stomach turned. You read my diary? Only 1 page, she said, her voice breaking. The one you marked. She opened it and slid it across the table. I recognized my 14-year-old handwriting. Today I heard Dad say he wishes he could trade me for another son. He said I'm useless and forgettable. He laughed while saying it. The other man laughed too. I don't think Dad ever really loved me. Starting today, I'll give him what he wants. I'll be invisible. If he doesn't want me as a son, then I won't act like one. Mom's tears hit the paper. You were just a kid, she whispered, 14 years old. I didn't look at her. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew what you'd say. You'd tell me he didn't mean it, that he was joking, that I should forgive him, that he loves me deep down. She didn't deny it, just lowered her head. I probably would have said that, she admitted, and that would have been wrong. She took a shaky breath and stood up. He called this morning. He wants to come talk. I don't want to see him. Ethan, you leave in 4 days. Then he can wait 4 days. You can't avoid this forever. Watch me. I went upstairs before she could say another word. From my room, I heard the front door open a few minutes later. Dad's voice, rough and tired. Laura, please. I need to talk to him. He doesn't want to see you. Just 5 minutes. David? I can't even process what you said. How could you talk like that about your own son? It was stupid. I was trying to fit in, make a joke. I didn't think. That's the problem. You never think when it comes to him. I need to see him, Dad pleaded. I need to apologize. An apology won't fix 4 years of damage. I know, but I have to try. Footsteps on the stairs. 3 knocks on my door. Ethan. His voice soft, trembling. Please open up. I didn't move. I know you can hear me, he said. And I know you probably hate me. You have every right to. Silence. What I said that day was unforgivable, he continued. There's no excuse, no explanation that makes it better. I was a coward, a terrible father, but I need you to know something. I didn't mean it. I never meant it. It was a stupid thing to say to get a laugh from another dad. I wasn't thinking. I stayed quiet. Please, he said. Just let me talk to you. After 5 minutes, his footsteps faded away, and for the first time in 4 years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, doubt. 2 days later, Dad came back home. He didn't stay in their bedroom. Mom told him to sleep in the guest room. They barely spoke. Noah tried to act normal, but the whole house felt like it was holding its breath. I spent those days packing, keeping my door locked most of the time. On Tuesday night, there was a knock on my door again. Mom's voice. Your father wants to talk to you. He says he won't leave until you listen. He can wait, I said. Ethan, you leave in 2 days, she said gently. If you don't talk now, when will you? Do you really want to carry this forever? Maybe that's for the best. She walked in and sat on my bed. No, it's not. You don't have to forgive him. Just listen. Sometimes forgiveness starts with understanding. I looked at her. Why do you keep pushing this? Because I'm your mother, she said simply. And because I don't want you to carry this anger for the rest of your life. The forgiveness isn't for him, Ethan. It's for you. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I sighed. 5 minutes? She nodded, relieved, and left the room. 2 minutes later, Dad stepped inside. He looked smaller, thinner than he'd been just a week ago. His eyes were dark and sunken, his face drawn. He sat down in the chair by my desk. Thank you for giving me this chance, he said quietly. I didn't answer. He clasped his hands together, nervous. I don't know where to start. I've been thinking about this for days and nothing feels like enough. Then don't say anything, I said coldly. I need to, he said. Even if it's not enough, he took a shaky breath. What I said that day was the worst thing I've ever said in my life. There's no excuse, no reason. I was trying to impress another dad, trying to be funny, and I used you as the punchline. It was cruel, and I'll regret it until the day I die. Why? I asked. What do you mean? Why did you say it? Why me? Why not Noah? He looked down at his hands. Because everyone already knew Noah. He was the star, the easy one to brag about. You were quieter, harder to read, and instead of trying to connect with you, I made the coward's choice. I mocked you to make myself feel comfortable. So you humiliated your own son to fit in, I said. He nodded slowly. I was insecure, weak, and stupid. I didn't think about how it would sound or how it would feel if you ever heard it. I thought it was just words. It wasn't just words, I said quietly. It was everything. I know, he said, tears welling in his eyes, and I know I can't take it back. You didn't even remember, I said. Mom had to drag it out of you. That's not true, he said quickly. I remembered the second Noah mentioned the tournament, but I was terrified to admit it, because I knew it was the reason you stopped talking to me. So you lied. I panicked, he said, because I couldn't face the reality that I'd done something so awful. I thought if I denied it, it would go away. I shook my head. You're unbelievable, he leaned forward. Ethan, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please believe me when I say I never thought those things about you. Not really. It was a stupid, thoughtless attempt at humor that came from my own insecurities, not from the truth. So the truth is what exactly? I asked. That you didn't mean it? Yes, then why did you laugh? He froze. I could see the moment he realized there was no answer that could make it right. You laughed, I said, my voice cracking. You laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world, like I was nothing. That laugh still echoes in my head every time I think about you. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. You're right, I laughed, and that's what makes it worse, because I can't undo that moment. I can't take away the way it made you feel. All I can do is own it and promise that I'll never let anything like that happen again. I stood and walked to the window. You think a promise changes anything? No, he said quietly. But maybe time will. If you let it. I turned back toward him. Why should I? You had time. 4 years of it. He nodded slowly. I know. And every single day I hoped you'd give me another chance. But you shouldn't have had to be the one to fix it. That was my job. I failed you, Ethan. He stood, hesitant. I can't ask you to forgive me, but I can ask for one thing. What? The chance to prove I can be better. Not today, not tomorrow. Just someday. Let me show you that I can be the father I should have been. I didn't answer. He took a step toward me. Please. I felt my chest tighten. Do you even understand what you did to me? Yes, he said softly. You stopped being my son the moment I made you feel like you weren't wanted, and that's something I'll live with for the rest of my life. Then why are you here? Because I don't want that to be the end of our story. We stood there in silence. His eyes were glassy, full of shame and something that looked like real regret. Can I hug you? He asked finally. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. He took a cautious step forward, then another. When his arms went around me, I froze. Then something inside me cracked, and I let it happen. For the first time in 4 years, I let my father hold me, and I cried. I cried for the 14-year-old boy who heard those words in a parking lot. I cried for all the years I'd spent trying not to feel anything. I cried because I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but at least now he finally understood what he'd destroyed. When we finally stepped apart, the room was silent again. This doesn't mean everything's fine, I said quietly. I know. I don't know if it ever will be. I understand. I wiped my eyes, but I'll try not to hate you. He nodded slowly. That's more than I deserve. He left the room without another word. That night, for the first time in days, we all ate dinner together. No yelling, no forced smiles, just quiet. The air was still heavy, but it wasn't unbearable anymore. Noah looked between us. So, are you two okay now? I didn't answer right away. Not okay, I said finally. But better. Dad gave a small nod. It's a start. Mom served the food without speaking, her eyes red but calm. After dinner, Noah came to my room. What happened? He asked. We talked, and? There's no magic fix, Noah. No big moment where everything's fine again. Just two people trying to figure out how to move forward. He nodded. Are you going to forgive him? I don't know. Maybe someday, but not today. He sat beside me. You know what hurts me the most? What? Realizing that while Dad was busy being proud of me, you were hurting, and I didn't see it. I shook my head. That wasn't your job to see. You were a kid. Still, he said, I wish I'd been a better brother. You were the best one I could have had, I said quietly. That's more than enough. He smiled weakly. I'm going to miss you. I'll miss you too. We sat there in silence, two brothers caught between what was broken and what might still be rebuilt. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of quiet voices downstairs, Mom and Dad. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught pieces through the thin walls. Soft, tired words, the kind people say when they've been hurt too long to yell anymore. By the time I went downstairs, Noah was already in the living room. They've been talking for hours, he whispered. Mom told me not to interrupt. We waited in silence until we heard the bedroom door open. Mom came out first. Her eyes were red, her face pale but calm. Dad followed, looking like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Noah stood. So, what's happening? Mom looked at both of us. We're going to counseling, she said quietly. Both of us. And your father's going to therapy on his own, too. That's it? Noah asked. For now, she said. It's a start. Dad nodded slowly. We have a lot to work through. Then he turned to me. And when you're ready, Ethan, I'd like to go to therapy with you, too, if you ever want that. I don't know when that'll be, I said honestly. There's no rush, he said softly. I'll be here whenever you decide. 2 days later, it was time for me to leave for college. My suitcases sat by the front door, and Noah's car waited outside to take me to the airport. Mom hugged me first, her arms wrapped tight around my shoulders like she was afraid to let go. Call me when you land, she said, her voice breaking. Every week, I don't care how busy you are. I will, I said. She wiped her eyes. I love you, Ethan, more than anything in the world. I love you too, Mom. She smiled faintly and stepped back. Dad approached next, hesitant. Can I? I nodded. He hugged me. Not too tight, not too long. Just enough. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't awkward. It just was. I'm going to do better, he whispered. You don't have to believe me. Just watch. Don't promise, I said quietly. Just do it, he nodded, eyes glassy. I will. When we pulled apart, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years. Determination, maybe real this time. Goodbye, Dad, I said. It was the first time I'd called him that since the parking lot. He froze for half a second, then smiled, his voice shaking. Goodbye, son. Noah grabbed my bags and loaded them into the car. He didn't say much until we were halfway to the airport. How are you feeling? He asked. Strange, I said. Relieved, sad, exhausted. All of it at once. That's normal. What about you? I asked. Guilty, he admitted. But also hopeful. Hopeful? He nodded. For the first time in years, I think we might actually become a real family. Not perfect, just real. That depends on Dad, I said. I know, he said, but I think he's serious this time. When we reached the airport, Noah parked the car and got out to help with my luggage. He pulled me into a hug. Take care of yourself, man. You too, he smiled. And hey, don't be too hard on him. He's trying. Trying isn't enough, I said quietly. He has to be better. Then give him the chance to prove it. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I wanted to believe it was possible. I waved one last time before walking into the terminal. I didn't look back. The flight was 3 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, thinking about the last few days. The truth had finally come out. The family had cracked apart, then started, slowly, to rebuild. Dad had said he was sorry, and I had said goodbye. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if he'd actually change or if we'd ever really be okay. But for the first time in 4 years, the weight on my chest felt lighter. Not gone, but manageable. 5 years later. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie. Today was my master's graduation. My phone buzzed. A text from Noah. We're on our way. Mom's been crying since we left. Dad had to pull over twice so she could calm down. I smiled. 5 years. It felt like both forever and an instant. During my first year away, Dad called every Sunday. At first, it was awkward. Long silences, small talk about classes and food, but he never missed a call. Not once. By the second year, we started talking about real things. He told me about therapy, about what he was learning, how he'd spent years hiding behind work and Noah's success because it made him feel like he mattered. My therapist says I used Noah's achievements to cover my own failures, he admitted one night. And I pushed you away because you reminded me of myself, quiet, uncertain, scared of not being good enough. I should have protected that in you, not punished it. That conversation changed something between us. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. By the third year, he came to visit me, alone. We spent a weekend together, watched a soccer game, ate cheap diner food, talked until midnight. At one point, he said, "Do you remember when you used to ask me to come to your matches?" "Yeah," I said. Every time I said no, I told myself it didn't matter, that you'd understand, that there'd be other games, but there weren't, were there? No, I said quietly. There weren't, he nodded. When I finally started showing up, it was already too late. It wasn't too late, I told him. You were just late. He looked up, confused. There's a difference, I said. Too late means you missed your chance. Being late means you still have one. That night, for the first time, I felt like maybe I really had a dad again. Not the one I imagined when I was a kid. Not the one who broke me when I was 14, but a man. Flawed. Human. Trying to make things right. At Christmas, during my 4th year, I finally went home. We had dinner together. Me, Mom, Noah, and Dad. For the first time in forever, he didn't talk only about Noah. He asked about my projects, my friends, my future, and he listened. After dinner, he pulled me aside and handed me a small box. Inside was an old scratched watch. It was my father's, he said. He gave it to me when I graduated college. I was going to give it to Noah, but you don't have to. Yes, I do, he said, smiling sadly. Noah has plenty of memories with me. Trophies, photos, all the games I went to. You don't. And that's my fault. This is just something. Something that's yours. I looked down at the watch. This doesn't erase what happened, I know, he said softly. But maybe it reminds you that I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't know how to show it. I put the watch on that night. I still wear it every day. Now, standing in front of the mirror 5 years later, I adjusted the same watch on my wrist. 5 years of therapy, forgiveness, and slow rebuilding. We weren't perfect. Maybe we never would be, but we were walking forward, together. The doorbell rang. I opened it to see Mom first, eyes already shiny with tears. "My baby!" she cried, hugging me tight. "Look at you!" Mom, you saw me 3 months ago. 3 months is a long time, she said, laughing through the tears. Noah walked in behind her, grinning. Congratulations, man. Officially a genius. Not yet, I said. Still gotta walk the stage. Then Dad appeared in the doorway. He didn't rush in. He just stood there for a second looking at me. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Thanks, Dad, I said. It wasn't the first time he'd said it, but every time he did, it meant something new. The ceremony was long. Names, speeches, applause. When they called mine, I looked up into the stands. Mom was crying again. Noah was filming. And Dad was standing, clapping, tears streaming down his face. For a moment, I thought of that boy. 14 years old, hiding behind a truck, hearing his father say he was forgettable. That boy had built walls, turned pain into silence, and taught himself to stop caring. But he wasn't me anymore. Now there was just a man who understood something simple but true. People can change. Not always, not easily, but they can try. And sometimes, that's enough. After the ceremony, we went out for pizza. Nothing fancy, just the four of us. Mom asked, "So what's next? You have job offers yet?" 3, I said. One here, one in New York, one back home. Dad looked up. Back home? Yeah, I said, smiling slightly. A local company offered me a position. Are you considering it? I met his eyes. Yeah, I am. He didn't say anything, just smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just small and real, but I saw it. That night, after they left for their hotel, I stood by my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. 5 years ago, I'd left home believing I'd never go back, believing my father would always be a stranger. I was wrong. The pain was real. The scars would never fully disappear. But I'd learned something. The future isn't written by what someone once said. It's written by what they choose to do afterward. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Thank you for letting us be part of today. It means more than I can say. I love you, son. I typed back 3 words. I love you too. And for the first time in 9 years, I meant every one of them.